now. Hello, old friends and new friends. It's so nice to see all of your faces. Thank you for taking time out of your day to be here with all of us. It's very lovely to see all of you. Um, I want to set the stage a little bit just to contextualize how this series started. Um, about 3 years ago, I was dealing with significant health challenges. Um, and as someone who has a chronic illness and is disabled, um, for some of us, a funny thing can happen in that we don't always feel safe in our own bodies. And when there's an added threat like a global pandemic, we don't always trust that our bodies are going to protect us in the ways that they were designed to. Can everybody hear me okay? Do you want to come? It's also, I'm sorry, I have to mask because I've been sick. And we all read lips to some. Do you want to come up a little bit? Okay, I will try to enunciate better. Is that a little bit better? Okay. You're gonna turn the AC down? Is anyone else having difficulty hearing me? Okay. I'm just getting over being sick, so I'm a little froggy, but I will do my best. Um, so when there's something like a global pandemic, um, we don't trust our bodies to protect us the way that they're designed to. So I was in a place where I was having a little bit of a war, feeling not safe in my body. And at that time, it was this extraordinary confluence of things. I was also newly estranged from my family of origin. And those two things, your body and the family that you're born into, those are, by nature, the first two things that are meant to hold and to keep you safe. And for me, in a pretty short period of time, those things were gone. And so for the first time in my life, I was thinking very intentionally about what it meant to create the feeling of home. How do we as human beings do that? How do we create places of safety, of warmth, and protection for ourselves? And at that time, I randomly saw this photo on the internet and could not stop thinking about it. A pigeon, this is on Reddit, a pigeon flew into some guy's window while he was out of town and just decided to start a family on his toiletry kit next to a janky bar of soap. And this became so aspirational to me, this idea. The idea of such resiliency and flexibility. The idea that a home could be made quite literally out of anything, anywhere, at any time. And that was really paradigm shifting for me. And so I started to look for how do other creatures make nests and homes? And I became obsessed with this idea. And I wanted to know, like, is this level of improvisation common? And it turns out, yes, it is very, very common. And animals are such incredible teachers in this way. They make absolutely miraculous things out of the most banal, everyday materials. Crummy old jacket hanging from a branch, that's somebody's dream home right there. Surveillance camera at an industrial business park, like penthouse loft. And so I wanted to know, like, also what materials are they using to create shelter in these places? And I learned that sometimes they use like they use like really traditional nesting materials, branches, twigs, moss, leaves, mud. Sometimes they blend traditional materials and non-traditional materials. Can you guys make that out? It's a nest inside of a helmet. And sometimes they have their babies on a pile of zip ties. And so this is another example of a pigeon nest, just like that first one on the toiletry kit. And I have now come to learn that pigeons are notoriously terrible nest builders. The worst. The absolute worst. They will just lay an egg inside of a pair of headphones. Or just, on the sidewalk near some twigs. But what I think is equally important and equally meaningful about pigeons is that they are among the most devoted, attentive parents. The males and the females share all of the work, incubating the young. The males and the females both produce milk from their own bodies to feed the young. And they are very, very collaborative in the way that they raise their babies. And this was the first lesson to me in all of this, which is that not every home has to look a certain way to be a wonderful home. So in all of this research, I could feel that part of my practice, because I'm an artist, so all of this I knew was going to be folded into something. I didn't know what yet. And I could feel that scavenging was going to be a really important part of the work, in that I wanted to use what materials were on hand, the way that these creatures I was studying were. And so I set out with a dear friend of mine, and we started going to train yards all over the state of Oregon. And you wouldn't believe the treasures that can be found along and beside train tracks. Just the most incredible things. Some that have fallen off of trains, some that have been left there by people traveling. Just the most beautiful, gnarled, a lot of steel, shopping carts, lots of stuff. And we just spent so many weekends and evenings in train yards scavenging. And then I also started going to junkyards, scrap yards. And the photo on the right is at Pine Meadow Ranch, which is just in Sisters here. It's what they call the boneyard. And it's a working ranch. And it's where all of the equipment and tools and building materials that are no longer useful go to die. And I spent my entire 2-week residency just in the boneyard, just picking through piles of detritus. And what became clear to me is that the things that I was seeing over and over and over were basically the human equivalent of nesting materials. And so what are human nesting materials? On a commercial and industrial scale, it's plastic, it's concrete, wood, some animal fiber, and steel. And I am particularly interested in concrete and steel because they're the most long-lived of those things. And also because time and exposure leave such incredible marks on those materials. And the objects and those materials really hold a record of time and place. And so, for example, something that I found in Sisters, which is desert, it only looks, the surface of it, a painterly surface, only looks that way because it had been in a pile in Sisters, Oregon, in the sun and the wind, it would look completely different if I had found it in the forest. And so I started to think of these materials as also like our bodies that record our experiences and the places that we exist in. And so this was the first way that I started thinking about working with human nesting materials, is through steel and concrete and the building blocks of the things that we create. But then we also have, these are more industrial materials, but we also have more residential nesting materials. And all of the things that start off in 4-color catalogs, they end up in the junkyards and in the landfills that I was going to regularly. And so I started seeing them very, very differently. And I started incorporating those type of materials as well. This piece right here, those are the legs of a bucket chair. A sink, I found that at the junkyard. And all of these are, buddy, these all of these things are the way that humans feather our nests. And so they became the vocabulary of this body of work. And as I was scavenging and working, I was also still ravenous to learn about how other creatures created homes for themselves. And I learned that not all creatures nest. Some, like this is a bagworm moth, some carry their homes on their backs. This is considered the architect of the insect kingdom. So the bagworm moth, they create mobile cocoons to protect their larvae from predators and parasites. This is the caddisfly. You're nodding because they're in North Carolina. Like the first time I ever saw one was in North Carolina, and they create these incredible rigid casings that they walk around with, and they produce silk from glands in their mouth, and they use it to glue together whatever is about, pieces of stone, shells, plant matter, rocks, and they are so indicative of their environment because they literally just take what is nearby. There was an artist who did a series in collaboration with caddisfly larvae, and he put them in, I don't remember his name, do you by any chance? He put them in a tank with precious and semi-precious stones, and they made their casings out of pearls and rubies and turquoise, just the most beautiful. So it's a testament to using whatever is at hand. And these are the casings of a newly discovered insect, I believe found on Oahu, called the bone collector caterpillar. It is a carnivorous caterpillar, which is, I believe, fairly unusual, and it wears the legs, the heads, and the wings of other insects on its case for camouflage and protection. So it creates an armor out of its enemies, basically. And so I started to think about, okay, so protection is also an important part of home. It's also an important part of feeling safe. What do we do that serves this purpose? As a species, we have all collectively decided that safety looks like keeping people out. We've developed barbed wire, razor wire, concertina wire to keep people out of our schools, our factories, our farms, our homes. our country. This is the border wall in Arizona. And we also create wires to keep people in the prisons, inside prisons and detention centers. And when I came across this image, it really struck me because I realized this had to be a conversation at some point, or this is written in a manual somewhere in terms of safety precaution. And that conversation had to go something like, well, let's put razor wire on the outside of the fence in case somebody tries to escape. Okay, but one row of it isn't enough because someone might jump over and they're not going to hurt themselves enough and they're going to be able to get away. How about we do 3 rows of it so that someone would be so mangled by it that they can't get away? This is a conversation that we're having with ourselves. This is a photo of an underpass in China. This is an example of hostile architecture used to prevent homeless encampments. These are benches that we're super familiar with that are created so that people don't get comfortable, so that people don't lie down in public spaces. The photo on the right is of a front stoop in Marseille, France. I think of a front stoop as like a place to gather. Like I grew up on the East Coast. Front stoop is where you had your friends, you had a 40 in a bag, you had music, and that was like a place to congregate. And that is what they are doing in Marseille so that nobody sits there or lays down there. And so important to us is the illusion of safety that we're actually willing to make ourselves uncomfortable in order to achieve it. We're willing to make our own spaces, the ones that we inhabit, completely inhospitable so that we can be assured that others aren't going to take refuge there. And it's not just people. We are also trying to control our spaces in terms of we don't want certain animals in certain places. These are called anti-bird spikes, but they're used for lots of different species. And they're put up residentially, they're put up industrially and commercially to keep birds from roosting outside where they live because it's inconvenient for us. And the best thing I found in all of this, this is a magpie, you may recognize. In the most ACAB fuck you thing of all time, magpies have started ripping anti-bird spikes off of buildings and making nests out of them. And these are just more nests of anti-bird spikes. And I was so inspired by this. And I started to think, like, what if these things that are meant to keep us out can actually be used by us to keep us safe? It turned everything on its ear. What if we take that which is inhospitable, that which rejects us, and use it for our own protection, our own safety? And so I started playing around with that idea a little bit. Making that, so I had to learn how to weave baskets in order to make that piece. It's weird that it's right there. And in the process of teaching myself how to weave baskets, I was also learning how to collect plant material for basket weaving. And there are certain plant fibers that are the best, daylilies being among them. And so I started, it was the time that I was working on this was not the ideal time for harvesting them. So I was like literally just walking around Portland anytime I saw daylilies, I was just dead ones. I was not killing anyone's daylilies. I was just picking them up. And one day I was going to the tire store. I dropped my car off at the tire store to have the tires changed out. And on the way to pick my car up, I found this trove of daylilies. And so I harvested a bunch and I walked into Les Schwab with this like armload of daylilies. And a woman came up to me and said, "I'm so sorry to bother you." I was online paying. "I'm so sorry to bother you. Did you just have like an overpowering need to weed before you got here? Like, what's going on?" And I told her, I said, "No, I'm an artist and I'm working on baskets and these are like the best stuff." And she said, "I have a yard full of daylilies. I live just over there. Do you want to come over?" And I was like, yes, I do want to come over. And she waited for me to finish. She had already paid. She waited for me to finish. I followed her back to her house, and she was like, "Here are all of your daylilies for you." And so this this series has also brought me so much community in the funniest places, um, and and so I've been also experimenting with what does it look like to take something that looks spiky and violent and scary and making it into something that isn't, and something that looks like it's meant to deter you. Maybe it's actually meant to keep you. And so these are just some of the ways that I've been playing around with materials and these ideas that I learned from our creature friends. This piece, there's one white cocoon, and that is, it's interesting because on the one hand I created it because I wanted it to symbolize the individual, because there was so much conformity, and I wanted there to be one that was like, that's the like punk rock, whatever creature made that, that's the punk rock one who's like, "No, I'm not going to do it the way all of you are doing it." But it also symbolizes community for me, because as I was working on this, in the same way that the woman at Les Schwab invited me back to her place to harvest from her yard, someone I know put a call out to people that I was looking for dog fur. And I got a DM from a complete stranger saying, "Hey, I run a husky rescue." I mean, if you're using dog fur, a woman who runs a husky rescue is like the mother lode. Because she was like, I can give you like a garbage bag full every 3 weeks. And I was like, oh my God. And like this, it took us like 4 weeks to meet, but we conversed for like weeks and weeks trying to set up a meeting place. And this is someone who, like, she's not getting anything from me. She's just she's like, "You're an artist, I want to support your art." And like, she's gathering fur and putting in a bag in her house and holding it for me, and then putting together, you know, a plan for us to meet and place. I mean, it's just there. It's so powerful the ways that we're able to come together for one another, and I see it in very small and very large ways. And this series has shown me so many of them. And as things have progressed politically, there's so much going on now. I'm also thinking much more globally about home. And the image on the left is of Gaza, and Iran is on the right. And we're at a place now where it's not enough just to keep people out or to keep people in. We are actively trying to destroy other people's homes. And one of the things that this series has gotten me thinking about is, how can we help create home for ourselves and also for other people? That's been the overarching understanding for me, is that as I have made each one of these sculptures, I realized that each one of them represents a person in my life, an emotional an emotional home that someone who loves me has created for me. And we have the ability to do that for other people. And we have the ability to do that for other people in even just in our very small circles. And we are all every day helping to create emotional homes for other people. And I want to leave you with, I think we should let the pigeon have the last word. I found this video. Some of you may have seen it. It's a pretty popular video, but to me, it just sums up everything that this series is about. I don't have audio on it, but I'm going to just narrate a little bit. That is a pregnant cat. And that is her pigeon friend who knows she's pregnant and is. Where's the cat? The cat is. Oh, she'll come back in. It's bright in here, but cat's lying down. And with all of her babies now. And the pigeon, that is the end of the video. And the pigeon was like, I'm going to build you a nest for your babies. And it's just like 8 twigs. But it's the act of, it doesn't matter what it looks like. It's the act of, I am making a safe place for you when you need one. So that, to me, that's why the series is titled Home. Thank you very much for being here today. Does anybody have any questions? You don't have, I don't want to put anybody on the spot. I am an introvert. I get it. Nobody needs to, yeah. Oh, in the work. It's become much more varied in form. Like in the beginning, I was making you can tell the earlier work, it's much more nest shapes. And it's become more like a little bit less tangible, a little bit less literal. And yeah. And also just my way of thinking about home has changed in the ways that I mentioned, that it isn't one thing, that it is many things, and we all have all of these facets of home that we can bring to ourselves for comfort and that we can share with other people. But I don't think that really answers your question. Okay.
That scale.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, how do you decide?
They are fairly small. So the answer is going to be pretty banal and uninteresting, but it's the real answer, which is that because the materials that I'm interested in are very heavy, it's a lot of steel and it's a lot of concrete. Some of it is just physical limitations of what fits in my car, what can I transport. There are 5 things I can think of just off the top of my head that I desperately want to make. One of them is an entire cab of a 1957 Ford pickup truck, teal, that is in a junkyard that I know of, that I want to make into a piece. I can't get it. I couldn't put it here. And so what I'm actually starting to think much more about is creating site-specific in situ works. Like I literally am thinking about, can I asked the private junkyard owner if I can do an artist residency over the summer there. If he's okay, like not selling certain things for a period of 2 months so I can make some things, photograph them. Because I am very, very interested in making larger work. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I'm actually quite interested in the range of scale. I'm not interested, there's a lot of art that is made scale just for scale's sake. They think that something is, if it's big, it's going to be arresting and powerful automatically. I actually love having something quite big, and I'll never give up the very precious tiny. That to me is also very powerful. I like small things as well, but some of it is just practical. That, something that is made of steel or concrete that's this big is literally too heavy for me and one other person to pick up. And my studio is small. I don't have a truck. And so these are the things that I fantasize though about, as like if I had a gantry crane and I had a certain kind of a truck and I had a bigger studio space, I definitely would experiment with much larger things. But the way that I'm starting to think about it is wanting to just make site specific work so that I can just leave the heavy thing where it is and then bring the shelter to it. Yes. Um, so I knew that I wanted to have a piece that was going to be created by the community here, because one of the things that I have discovered, not just in making this series, but also I think a lot of us are having this experience just in going through the last years of living, being a human on Earth, is how much we feel connected to our communities and the people who we love and the people who love us. And so I wanted there to be that's like a huge representation for me of home and security is community. And so I wanted a piece that was not created by me, but a piece that would be a tangible representation of what this community who comes here considers home and safety, and can you co-create that together. And so I knew that my job was just going to be to create the container for it. And so that was my job, to like scavenge. And I was for a year and a half looking for just the right thing. I never know until I see a thing that like, oh, that's it. And I was at a scrapyard and I saw, this was right at the time when um, we were ramping up ICE activity and people were going into detention centers. And I saw this length of chain link fence and it was dented and banged up and it had been outside. And I thought, a fence is also a representation of keeping people in or keeping people out. And it's also, though, it can be a meeting place. I think of fences where people tie locks to them. And so I saw it and I was like, oh my gosh, that's it. And then it didn't fit in anybody's truck. So that was like my dear friend Crystal. We ended up strapping it to her behemoth of a Mad Max vehicle. Getting it out here. So the idea is, and for those of you who haven't had a chance to visit that room, I would invite you, if you would like to go in there. And the prompt is I've left a bunch of materials in there, many of which were left over from the series. Also, people have brought materials to the gallery and donated materials. There is fabric from a monk's cassock. There are mothers and grandmothers sewing ribbon. There's a lot of things that people have brought here as well, and people that think materials that people have brought from home to tie to the fence. There's a lock of hair in there. There's a T-shirt from a 5K run for breast cancer. So the prompt is to take a moment in that room and to just get quiet and to imagine the person, place, thing, or experience that most makes you feel at home in the world. And while holding on to that feeling, to take something in there that's tangible, we have baskets full of material, and to tie that to the fence to create a physical manifestation of that feeling. And so to create a community of a felt sense of home on that piece of fence. So anyone who would like to do that, I invite you to take a moment to do that. And thank you so much for being here. Yeah.
I'll talk about the porcupine quills.
Talk about them?
Yeah, just to begin with, like that's a different shift.
Yeah.
From found things and
yeah.
Where you source them and how to talk about them.
Yeah. So the porcupine quills are that's very, very early series. Very early. And so there are some pieces that have no found objects in them. And that was just me kind of sorting out materials and hard and soft and habitable and uninhabitable and that kind of thing. And I can't remember how, I think I maybe had like a porcupine quill that I had just gathered in my wanderings in the world, and I was and I used it, and I was like, this is the thing. And then I just sourced it online, eBay, or not eBay, sorry. Thank you. And then you go down a porcupine rabbit hole, and there's, I mean, there's African, I mean, they're incredible. And so those are earlier works. And then as the as the series goes on, there's more scavenging and there's more reliance on materials that are just about. And I stopped ordering things from far away, and I stopped sourcing. Not that it's bad, I love those early works. I just, that's part of the maturation of the idea. And I created a lot of really interesting rules for myself with the series, like I wouldn't pay for found materials, which put me in some very funny positions where like I found a perfect thing and I was with a friend and it was like $30 and I was like, well, I can't use it. And they're like, but it's the perfect thing. And I was like, I know. And they were like, I'm buying it for you. And so most of the things have just been cobbled together, found. And it's really interesting. Something else I've learned, which is so weird in doing this, is how much our refuse and our garbage and the things that we don't want anymore is gate kept. Like, first of all, there are, like, in my day, there used to be junkyards. That's not a thing anymore. Like, I happened to find literally a secret private junkyard that they're like texting me the secret address to. I couldn't tell anyone I was going there or where it was because they would be shut down. And most places they want to sell everything for scrap. They don't want people going through stuff. And I tried to work out a situation where I could go to the transfer station, which is what our fancy way of calling the dump up in Portland, because I was like, I want to reuse this. Nope, you can't go, because they are now wanting to profit as much from the things we throw away. And so it's getting harder and harder actually to find. Not impossible, obviously, but I thought that was quite interesting, that I would go to places and be like, I want to take that off your hands, like that's unusable. And they were like, no, we have a company that comes and they pay us, and we don't.
Seems like both Portland, no, I don't know. San Francisco and New York have artists' residencies in their garbage.
We have one in Portland called Glean.
Yeah.
It's very, very, very competitive, and it's like 5 people per year.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, if they opened it up to all the people who wanted to scavenge, but they're not interested in doing that. So that was a very interesting thing to discover about. I thought people were gonna be like, here, take it. No, you have to. It's difficult to find these things. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Thank you.